Afternoon everybody. Sorry I can't be in your lesson today, but just because I'm not there doesn't mean that you can't do some revision for your exam. So we're going to use our past paper questions that we started last lesson that you should have in your files and bags. So if somebody could pause the projection whilst everybody gets out their work from last lesson. If you don't have your sheet with you, all the questions that we're going to do are going to come up on the board. So if you can get some lined paper from the front of the classroom now for me, please, that would be fantastic. Okay, now that everybody has got their worksheets ready to go, the first couple of questions require you to use figures 4 and 5 in the resource booklet. They're going to come up on screen in just a moment once we've had a quick look at these questions. So question A, part 1, is simply the name of a city that you're looking for. Please remember to give it a capital letter because it's the name of a city. When you're comparing the growth of a city in question A part 2, can you please remember to use facts about Tokyo and Lagos? Okay, you will not be able to get the 2 full marks if you do not use facts straight from the resource. So here is figure 4. If you could pause this now so that everybody can answer the first question. Okay, a couple of things to note: that Tokyo does have a much larger population, but its current growth is a lot slower than what Lagos is going to go through over the next few years, projected up to 2015. Make sure that you've definitely used some population figures from the graph and have quoted next to it that it's population in millions. This next slide shows figure 5, which is a picture of a squatter settlement in Rio de Janeiro. Have a look at the image just to get yourself a bit of a feel for what squatter settlements look like. Have a look at the construction of the buildings. It's an informal settlement. It's not built to any type of building regulation. Lots of scrap metal used. People have built these settlements themselves, and it's not really a hugely safe place to be in a number of ways. Lots of crime, lots of disease, and the chance of the buildings collapsing at any time. So keep all of this in mind when we're looking at the next couple of questions. Here's the mark scheme for the question where you have to compare the growth in population of Tokyo and Lagos. Have a look at the facts and figures that have been used. See if you've managed to put those in and whether you think you would get 2 marks. So if we can pause for another minute so as everybody can check their answers, highlight on your answers where you have used facts and figures. On to question B. Give 2 attractions of cities for people who live in rural areas of LEDCs. So what makes them want to go to the city? What are they going to have there that they don't have in an LEDC? Have a go at this question. It's 2 marks. So as much detail as you can get in that small space that you've been provided with there. If you're working faster than the speed of the presentation, please feel free just to work on through the questions and then use the mark schemes as it comes up to help you check your answers. Please pause the projection to allow students to answer this question. Okay, so check your answers, add some extras just to make sure that you've got them. Make sure that you've got some decent answers to be able to revise from. So how many of these did we manage to get in the classroom? Hopefully there's lots of jobs, that's what they'll be hoping for. Health services, education, and so on. Bright lights is one of my firm favourites. Promise of a better life, wanting to have a higher standard of living compared to what they have in a rural area. Before we move on to question C, some of you might have already had a go at it. I want you to have a think about your squatter settlement case studies. So favelas in Rio de Janeiro, and so on. These are illegal settlements. They've not been given any permission to be built. So if you were trying to build an illegal settlement, what would you want it to be near to? You're migrating from a rural area to the city, so get yourself in the mindset of these migrants. They want to be as close to the city as possible. They're not going to have hot and cold running water, so they might need to be near a river, and possibly on a floodplain, because there's no other buildings there. If it was a legal settlement, they would never get planning permission. Near main roads, so you've got easy access into the city. Near to factories. Why are they going to want to be near to a factory? Quite an obvious development of that point, that they're going to be able to find well-paid jobs. Have a look at the list there, and see if you came up with any of those locations. Jot them down in your answers if you need to. So here's some of the explanation. Because this was a 4-mark question, you can only get 1 mark for the point. If it's not then developed, you won't get that point. So quite often it's on land that is unsuitable for permanent development, as I mentioned about building on the floodplain. Easy access to work, so that would match up well with the factories. Easy access to the city centre, that would match up well with the with the main roads, and so on. Make sure you've got that point developed. So if you could pause this for another minute, please, just so as students can get some detailed notes down into their question papers. Okay, for this question, explain why squatter settlements are a problem for city councils. Try and get yourself together in pairs or even on your tables as a group and come up with as many ideas as possible. This question is marked out of 4, and you can get 1 mark for each statement. So try and get a minimum of 4. Perhaps if you get a few more, you're going to get your chances up of definitely reaching those 4 marks. Please pause the projection now. Okay, you should have had enough time now to come up with some answers. So we'll have another look at the mark scheme to make sure that you've got a good selection of answers and that you're on the right track. So here's some of the options. Have a read, see which ones you've got, and add some extra to your answer to make sure that whilst you're revising, you've got as much information as you possibly can. Please pause the projection now to allow students to add to their notes. This next question you'll see is about MEDCs, so be sure to recognise that we're not talking about poor countries anymore, we're talking about more economically developed countries, and our specific examples that we used in lesson of counter-urbanisation were from here in the UK. The question's asking you about consequences for rural areas, not for the city, for rural areas. A consequence can be something that is both positive and negative. You probably have more negative information in your notes. Don't forget, it's marked out of 4. You're asked to develop your ideas, so you'll get 1 mark for the consequence and then another mark for the development of that consequence. So there's a couple of connectors for you there. This means that, therefore, consequently, and so on. You can answer your question individually or you can do it in a pair, as long as you've got your point down and developed, and then we'll look at the mark scheme. Please pause for 4 to 5 minutes to allow answering of the question. Once again, have a look at your answer. Have a look at the answers that have been provided as exemplars by the exam board and see where you could improve your answers, add some notes to your work to make sure that you've got plenty of information to help you and improve your work. Lots of notes for your revision. Okay, last question of the day. Changes in retail provision. I think this is actually quite a difficult question, so have a look through your retailing notes. If you haven't got them with you, the yellow textbooks should be on the side for you to have a sift through retailing and familiarise yourself with retailing. I'm going to put some of the suggested content from the examiners up for you to have a read in just a minute before you start discussing amongst yourselves how to answer this question. There are a couple of things that you need to remember, as these come from the old specification. You now have 9 marks for the question and of course our 3 SPAG. So please change the bottom section of your question to reflect that. 9 marks and 3 SPAG. This is some of the content guide that is expected from the examiner. Have a read through it and start thinking about how you could develop your answer. You must have your 3 developed points. We looked at Cribbs Causeway as a specific case study and its effects on the high street. We looked at accessibility and people having cars and so on. So see if you can locate your notes on this and start having a read through. You might not get the answer completely done in today's lesson, but it's just a good chance for you to start reviewing your notes. So take some time. This will be paused with the expected answers on the board, and then for you now to start working together. Don't do it in isolation, help each other out. So please pause the projection. That's the last bit that I'm going to add to the lesson. Please leave any answers at the end of the lesson to be collected, and they will get to me so as I can mark them. Hope you've worked really well this lesson and find this useful. See you all soon.